Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Stephen Green. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Rear Admiral Cesar Bernard N. Valencia, Vice Commander, Philippine Navy, accompanied by Rear Admiral Jonathan Early, Deputy Chief of Navy Australia, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association, and we welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Killian's School from Bendigo, Victoria. Now, if you're able, I invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private John Grant Geran. John Geran was born on the 13th of December 1894 in Charlottesville, Queensland. Affectionately known as Jack, he was one of 6 children and the eldest son of local carrier Timothy Geran and his wife Mary. Jack received his education at Charlottesville State School and later worked on the clerical staff of the Toowoomba Foundry Company, where he was working at the outbreak of the First World War. Jack Geran enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 28th of August 1915. He was assigned to the 9th Reinforcements of the 25th Battalion with the rank of private and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service in January the following year, sailing from Brisbane on board the troop ship Wandella. Private Geran reached Egypt after several weeks at sea. There, in March, he was admitted to hospital with influenza. He spent a few weeks recovering and was discharged in April. A month later, he embarked for the Western Front, arriving in the French city of Marseille on the 26th of May, 1916. From there, Geran was sent north to the French and Belgian border, where he joined the rest of his unit in early June. Over the following weeks, Geran's unit undertook periods of training behind the lines, as well as short stints on duty in the trenches. In July, the 25th was sent south to the Somme Valley to take part in the advance on German positions around the French village of Pozières. They entered the front lines around the village on the 28th of July 1916 in preparation to attack under the cover of darkness the following morning. They began their advance just after midnight on the 29th, tasked with taking 2 lines of German trenches on Pozières Ridge. In 5 waves, the men of the 25th jumped the parapets, immediately coming under murderous machine gun fire from enemy lines. As they pressed forward, Geran and his comrades were hit by enemy's artillery, as well as fire from mortars just as they reached their first objective. By the time they made it to the second trench, the 25th was so outnumbered they were forced to dig in for cover. Private Herbert Harris, who was also caught in the fighting at Pozières, described the battle. Imagine men dug in a few feet into the ground and shells falling just like rain. Trenches blown up and men digging for dear life to rebuild them, or rescuing their comrades who were buried, and in most cases, the rescuers were also buried by shells. When entering the trenches, we were bombarded with tear and gas shells which made us have to wear our gas helmets. It is almost impossible to see and hard to breathe. I've heard officers and men say that the landing and the Lone Pine battle at Gallipoli were a picnic compared to this last fight. Shortly after, they received their orders to retreat to their own lines. By the following morning, the 25th Battalion had suffered some 340 casualties. Among the missing was Private Jack Geran. He remained missing for well over a year, during which time nothing was heard of him. At the end of July 1917, a court of inquiry determined that Geran was most likely killed in action during his unit's attack on Pozières. His final resting place was never uncovered. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian Memorial of Villers-Bretonneux, among more than 10,000 others who have no known grave. Private Jack Geran was just 21 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This, but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Grant Geran, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. Wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.